The gunshot that killed her husband still echoed in Lily Harper's dreams every night, even though 3 years had passed since that scorching afternoon in August of 1878, when outlaws had ridden through their ranch outside Fort McDowell, Arizona territory, leaving nothing but destruction and a widow barely 21 years old. She stood now on the porch of the general store she managed in town, her honey-colored hair pulled back in a practical bun, her green eyes surveying Main Street with the wariness of someone who had learned that happiness could be stolen in an instant. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty road, and she wiped her brow with the back of her hand before heading inside to finish the inventory. The bell above the door chimed as a customer entered, and Lily looked up from her ledger to see a tall man in worn denim and a dusty hat. She recognized him vaguely as one of the ranch hands from the Patterson spread about 10 miles west of town. He came in occasionally for supplies, but never said much beyond what was necessary for conducting business. "Afternoon," she said politely, her voice pleasant but distant in the way she had perfected over the years. Friendly enough to keep customers coming back, but cool enough to discourage any personal interest. The cowboy nodded, removing his hat to reveal dark brown hair and eyes that were almost black in the dim light of the store. "Madam," he said quietly, his voice deep and rough from years of working in the sun and wind, "need some tobacco and coffee if you have it. Of course." Lily moved behind the counter, reaching for the requested items. She could feel his gaze on her but kept her eyes focused on her task. Men looked at her often enough, a young widow running a business alone. Some with pity, some with inappropriate interest, but this man's gaze felt different somehow, more contemplative than predatory. "Heard you had some trouble with your roof after that storm last week," he said as she wrapped his purchases in brown paper. Lily's hands paused briefly before continuing their work. "News travels fast," she replied, not looking up, "but I have someone coming to fix it next week." "Jacob Miller charges too much," the cowboy said matter-of-factly, "and his work is sloppy. I could fix it properly for half what he is asking." Now she did look up, meeting those dark eyes with suspicion born of hard experience. "I do not need charity, Mr. Ryder Zimmerman," he supplied. "And it is not charity. I am good with repairs and I could use the extra money, fair trade." Lily studied him for a long moment. Ryder Zimmerman did not look away, did not shuffle his feet or show any sign of discomfort under her scrutiny. There was something solid about him, something that reminded her painfully of the stability she had once known and lost. $2, she said finally. "That is what I can afford." "Fair enough." He placed coins on the counter for his purchases. "I will come by Sunday afternoon if that suits you." She nodded curtly, and he left as quietly as he had arrived. Lily watched through the window as he mounted a bay horse and rode slowly down the street, and she felt an unfamiliar flutter of something in her chest that she immediately suppressed. She had meant what she told herself every day for 3 years. Her heart had been buried with Thomas Harper, and no amount of kind gestures or quiet competence would resurrect it. Sunday arrived with clear skies and temperatures that promised to climb well into the 90s. Lily spent the morning at church, sitting in her usual spot near the back, listening to Reverend Thompson's sermon about forgiveness and moving forward. The irony was not lost on her. She had forgiven God, or at least made peace with him, for taking Thomas. But moving forward felt like a betrayal of everything they had planned together. After a simple lunch of bread and cheese, she heard the sound of boots on her porch. Ryder Zimmerman stood there with a toolbox in one hand and a ladder balanced on his shoulder, looking as calm and unhurried as he had in the store. "The damaged section is on the east side," Lily said, stepping aside to let him set down his equipment. I have some shingles in the shed that should match." "I will take a look," Ryder replied, and then he was climbing the ladder with the ease of someone who had done such work 1,000 times before. Lily tried to go about her usual Sunday activities, mending clothes and preparing bread dough for the week ahead, but she found herself distracted by the steady sounds of work above her head. When she brought out a pitcher of water and a cup 2 hours later, Ryder was just descending the ladder, his shirt damp with sweat and his face streaked with dust. "Thought you might be thirsty," she said, pouring him a cup without waiting for a response. "Obliged." He drank deeply, and she noticed the way his throat worked, the strength in his hands that held the cup. She looked away quickly, annoyed with herself for noticing anything at all. "It is worse than I thought up there," Ryder said, setting down the empty cup. "Whoever built that section did not secure the supports properly. One more storm like the last one and you would have had water damage throughout the whole house." Lily felt her stomach sink. "How much more will it cost?" "Same price," Ryder said, picking up a hammer, "but it will take longer. I will need to come back next Sunday if that is all right." "You cannot do proper work for $2 if it requires that much more time," Lily protested, even as relief washed through her. Jacob Miller had quoted her $15, money she simply did not have after a slow month at the store. "I gave you a price and I will honor it." Ryder's tone brooked no argument. "Besides, I like the work. Ranch life gets monotonous." He returned to the ladder before she could respond, and Lily went back inside with the strange feeling that something had shifted, though she could not name what. Over the following weeks, Ryder Zimmerman became a regular fixture at Lily's small house behind the general store. The roof project expanded as he discovered more problems, but true to his word, he never asked for additional payment. Sometimes Lily would bring him water or coffee, and they would exchange a few words about the weather or the latest news from town. She learned that he was 26 years old, originally from Texas, and had been working at the Patterson Ranch for nearly 2 years. He was good with horses, preferred his own company to crowds, and had a dry sense of humor that occasionally caught her off guard. "Why did you leave Texas?" she asked one afternoon in mid-September as he worked on replacing a section of gutter. Ryder was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, "My father and I had different ideas about how life should be lived. Arizona seemed far enough away to sort out my own path." Lily understood that kind of pain, the fracturing of family bonds. Her own parents had died of fever when she was 16, leaving her alone until Thomas Harper had offered her not just love but belonging. "Do you regret it?" "No." The answer was immediate and firm. "A man has to live according to his own conscience, not someone else's expectations." She thought about that for the rest of the day, about how she had been living according to the expectations of grief, following a script that kept her safe but isolated. The realization was uncomfortable, so she pushed it away and focused on her work. By October, the roof was finished, and Lily found herself disappointed that Ryder would have no reason to return. She paid him his $2, which he accepted with a nod, and then he stood on her porch holding his toolbox with an expression she could not quite read. "The store's porch steps are starting to rot," he said finally. "They are going to be dangerous come winter." "I know." Lily folded her arms across her chest. "Mr. Zimmerman, I appreciate your help, but I cannot keep accepting work that you undercharge for. It is not right." "Then pay me in meals instead," he suggested. "Your cooking has to be better than the slop we get at the ranch bunkhouse." Despite herself, Lily smiled. "That is not much of a compliment from what I hear about bunkhouse cooking." "So you agree?" There was something almost hopeful in his usually stoic expression. Lily knew she should say no. She should thank him politely and send him on his way, maintaining the careful distance she had cultivated. But the words that came out were, "Sunday supper, after you finish the steps." The smile that crossed Ryder Zimmerman's face was like sunrise breaking over the desert, transforming his serious features into something warm and open. "I will be here." As autumn deepened and the brutal Arizona heat gave way to milder temperatures, Sunday became the day Lily both anticipated and dreaded. Ryder would arrive after church, work on various repairs around her property, and then join her for supper at her small kitchen table. Their conversations grew longer and more personal, though Ryder never pushed for more than she was willing to share. One Sunday in late October, as they sat over apple pie that Lily had made from fruit she had traded for at the store, Ryder said, "Tell me about your husband." Lily's fork froze halfway to her mouth. In 3 years, no one had asked her that directly. People tiptoed around Thomas's memory, offering platitudes about God's plan and time healing all wounds, but no one actually wanted to hear about the man himself. "Why do you want to know?" she asked carefully. "Because he was important to you," Ryder said simply. "And anything important to you is worth knowing about." Lily set down her fork, her throat suddenly tight. "His name was Thomas Harper. We were married for 2 years before he died. He was kind and hardworking and had plans to expand our ranch into something that could support a family." She paused, swallowing hard. "He wanted children. At least 4, he used to say, enough to make sure none of them grew up lonely like he had. And you," Ryder's voice was gentle. "Did you want that too?" "Yes." The word came out as barely more than a whisper. "I wanted everything with him. And then 3 men I had never seen before rode onto our property demanding money and horses. Thomas told them to leave. They shot him instead." Ryder's jaw tightened, but he did not offer empty condolences. Instead, he asked, "Did they catch the men who did it?" "2 of them. They were hanged in Tucson 6 months later." Lily picked up her fork again but just pushed the pie around her plate. "The 3rd one was never found." For a long time I was angry about that. Angry that he got away while Thomas was in the ground. But anger is exhausting, and eventually I just felt hollow. "And now?" Ryder asked. Lily looked up, meeting his steady gaze. "Now I am not sure what I feel. Mostly I just try to get through each day without thinking too hard about what I have lost." Ryder reached across the table, his calloused hand covering hers with surprising gentleness. "That is not living, Lily. That is just surviving." She pulled her hand back as if burned, standing abruptly and carrying her plate to the sink. "Surviving is enough," she said, her back to him. "It has to be." She heard the scrape of his chair, felt him come to stand behind her. He did not touch her, but his presence was solid and warm at her back. "What if it does not have to be?" he said quietly. "What if you could have more?" Lily gripped the edge of the sink so hard her knuckles went white. "I cannot," she said, and her voice broke on the words. "I cannot love again, Ryder. I cannot go through that pain again. It almost destroyed me the first time. Lily." The way he said her name made something crack inside her chest. "Look at me." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face now. "Please just go." But Ryder did not leave. Instead, he very gently turned her around, his hands on her shoulders, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When she did not, he tilted her chin up with one finger until she had no choice but to meet his eyes. "I understand you are scared," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I understand you have been hurt in ways that make it hard to trust that good things can last. But Lily, I am asking you to let me try. Let me prove you wrong about never loving again." "Why?" she whispered. "Why does it matter to you?" "Because I am half in love with you already," Ryder said, and the honesty in his words struck her like a physical blow. "I have been since the first time I walked into that store and saw you standing there, strong and sad and so beautiful it hurt to look at you. And I know you do not feel the same way, not yet. But I am a patient man, and I think you could, given time. Lily stared at him, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Part of her wanted to push him away, to retreat back into the safe numbness she had inhabited for 3 years. But another part, a part she had thought died with Thomas, whispered that maybe Ryder Zimmerman was right. Maybe surviving was not enough anymore. I do not know how, she admitted, her voice small. I do not know how to do this again. We will figure it out together, Ryder said. And then, very slowly, giving her every chance to refuse, he leaned down and kissed her forehead with such tenderness that Lily felt something inside her break free. She leaned into him, letting him hold her while she cried for the first time in over a year. She cried for Thomas and the life they had planned, for the children they would never have, for the years of loneliness she had endured. And when she was finally empty of tears, she found that the hollow feeling was not quite so vast anymore. In its place was something fragile and tentative but undeniably warm. I need time, she said against his chest. I need to go slowly. As slow as you need, Ryder promised. I am not going anywhere. The months that followed were a lesson in patience for both of them. Ryder continued his Sunday visits, but now there was an acknowledged courtship happening, gentle and careful. He brought her small gifts, wildflowers from the range, a book of poetry that a traveling merchant had been selling, a soft shawl for the cold desert nights. Lily found herself looking forward to his arrival each week with an anticipation that was both thrilling and terrifying. In December, Ryder invited her to the Patterson Ranch for their annual Christmas gathering. It would be the first social event Lily had attended as part of a couple since Thomas's death, and she almost refused out of sheer anxiety. But Ryder's quiet confidence gave her courage, and she found herself standing in the ranch house's large living room wearing her best dress, Ryder's hand warm and steady on her lower back. The ranch owner, Samuel Patterson, was a gruff man in his 60s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He looked between Lily and Ryder with an expression that might have been approval. "About time you found yourself a good woman, Zimmerman," he said. "You have been moping around my ranch long enough." "I do not mope, sir," Ryder replied mildly, and several of the other ranch hands laughed. "He absolutely mopes," one of them said, a young man named Charlie with red hair and freckles. "Any time he comes back from town on Sunday evenings, he has this dopey expression on his face." Ryder's ears turned red and Lily found herself laughing, a real genuine laugh that surprised her with its lightness. "Is that so?" she said, looking up at Ryder with amusement. "They exaggerate," Ryder muttered, but he was smiling too. The evening passed in a blur of conversation and surprisingly good food. Lily met Ryder's fellow ranch hands and their families, and found herself welcomed with a warmth she had not experienced in years. These were good people, hardworking and honest, and they clearly thought highly of Ryder. She saw him in a new light that night, watching how he interacted with the other men, how they sought his advice on various matters, how even Samuel Patterson treated him with the respect usually reserved for a foreman rather than a regular hand. On the wagon ride back to Fort McDowell, with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders and the stars brilliant overhead, Lily found herself leaning against Ryder's solid warmth. "Your friends like you," she observed. "They are good people," Ryder agreed. "Samuel has been fair to me, better than I had any right to expect when I showed up here 2 years ago with nothing but a horse and a bad attitude." Bad attitude? Lily could not imagine Ryder being anything but calm and steady. "I was angry when I left Texas," Ryder admitted. "Angry at my father, angry at the world. Samuel let me work it out through hard labor and did not ask questions when I wanted to be left alone. Eventually, I found peace out here in the desert. And now, Lily asked softly. Ryder glanced down at her, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. Now I have found something better than peace. I have found purpose. The way he looked at her when he said it made Lily's breath catch. She reached up and touched his face, feeling the rough stubble on his jaw, the warmth of his skin. "Kiss me," she whispered, surprising herself. Ryder's eyes widened slightly, but he did not need to be asked twice. He pulled the wagon to a stop and turned to her, cupping her face in both hands. When his lips met hers, it was gentle at first, questioning. But when Lily pressed closer, the kiss deepened into something that made her forget the cold night air, forget everything except the feeling of being alive and wanted. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Ryder rested his forehead against hers. "Lily Harper," he said hoarsely, "you are going to be the death of me." "I certainly hope not," she replied, and was rewarded by his low laugh. January of 1879 brought unseasonably cold weather to Arizona territory, with frost on the windows each morning and a crispness to the air that made every breath visible. Lily woke one Monday morning to find the water in her pitcher frozen solid, and the store's pot-bellied stove struggling to heat the space. She was trying to coax more warmth from the stubborn thing when the door opened, letting in a blast of frigid air and Ryder Zimmerman. "What are you doing here?" she asked, surprised. His visits were usually reserved for Sundays, a rhythm they had established over the months. "Patterson gave me a few days off," Ryder said, stomping snow from his boots. "Thought I would check on you with this cold snap." Something in his tone made Lily look at him more carefully. "Is everything all right?" Ryder closed the door and came further into the store, pulling off his gloves. "I need to talk to you about something," he said. "Something important." Lily's heart began to pound, but she gestured to the chairs near the stove. "Sit. I will make coffee." They sat in silence while the coffee boiled, and Lily tried to prepare herself for whatever he was going to say. Was he leaving? Had she done something wrong? Had he realized that courting a widow with too much baggage was not worth the effort? Finally, with steaming cups in their hands, Ryder said, "Samuel Patterson is retiring next year. He has offered to sell me the ranch." Of all the things Lily had been expecting, this was not one of them. "That is wonderful," she said carefully. "But can you afford it?" "He is willing to let me pay over time, taking a share of the profits until the debt is cleared. It is more than generous." Ryder set down his cup and took her hands in his. "But Lily, running a ranch that size is not a one-man operation. I would need help. I would need a partner." Lily's breath caught as she understood what he was really saying. "Ryder, I am asking you to marry me," he said, his dark eyes intense on hers. "I know it has not been long by conventional standards. I know you are still healing from losing Thomas. But Lily, I love you. I love your strength and your kindness and the way you have survived something that would have broken most people. I love the way you hum while you work, and how you always give credit to customers who are short on cash. I love everything about you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice in trusting me." Tears were streaming down Lily's face, but for once they were not tears of grief. "I am scared," she admitted. "What if something happens to you? What if I lose you like I lost Thomas?" "Life does not come with guarantees," Ryder said gently, reaching up to wipe away her tears with his thumb. "We could get married and have 50 years together, or one of us could be gone tomorrow. But Lily, is not the time we have worth the risk? Would you really choose to live the rest of your life alone just to avoid the possibility of pain?" Lily thought about the past few months, about how Ryder had brought light back into her world. She thought about Sunday suppers and stolen kisses, and the way her heart leaped every time she saw him. She thought about Thomas and the love they had shared, and she knew with absolute certainty that he would not want her to spend the rest of her life as a living ghost. "Yes," she said, and watched joy transform Ryder's face. "Yes, I will marry you." Ryder pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that left them both breathless. When they finally separated, he pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple gold band with a small turquoise stone set in it. "It belonged to my mother," he said as he slipped it onto her finger. "She gave it to me before I left Texas, said I should save it for someone who made me believe in better things. You are that someone, Lily." Lily looked at the ring through fresh tears, then at the man who had been patient enough to wait for her heart to heal. "When?" she asked. "As soon as you are ready," Ryder replied. "We can have a small ceremony or a large one, whatever you want. I just want you to be my wife." "Small," Lily decided. "Just us and a few friends, maybe in the spring when the desert blooms." "Perfect," Ryder agreed and kissed her again. The news of their engagement spread through Fort McDowell like wildfire, and Lily was surprised by how genuinely happy people seemed for her. The women who frequented her store offered congratulations and advice in equal measure, while the men who knew Ryder from the ranch or around town clapped him on the back and declared him a lucky man. Not everyone was pleased, of course. Jacob Miller, the carpenter who had lost the job of fixing Lily's roof to Ryder, made some snide comments about impropriety and women who did not observe proper mourning periods. Lily ignored him with the dignity she had cultivated over years of running her own business, but Ryder was less diplomatic. "Thomas Harper has been dead for 3 years," he said coldly, when Miller made the mistake of voicing his opinion in the saloon where several ranch hands were present. "Lily has mourned him honestly and well. If you have something to say about her character, you will say it to me first." Miller, who was not a small man but was also not foolish enough to test Ryder's quiet intensity, backed down muttering. Charlie, the young red-headed ranch hand, later reported this story to Lily with obvious glee. "You should have seen Zimmerman's face," he said. "Thought Miller was going to wet himself." "Ryder should not have to defend me," Lily said, though she was secretly pleased. "That is what a man does for the woman he loves," Charlie replied with the certainty of youth. "Besides, everyone knows Miller is just bitter because you turned him down last year." Lily had forgotten about that awkward evening when Jacob Miller had shown up at her door with flowers and intentions, refusing to leave until she had made it abundantly clear she was not interested. The memory made her appreciate Ryder's patient courtship even more. February brought Lily to another milestone when she realized she needed to visit Thomas's grave before the wedding. She had not been back to the cemetery since the funeral, unable to face the reality of his death made permanent in stone. But now, preparing to marry another man, she knew she owed it to Thomas's memory to say a proper goodbye. She told Ryder what she planned, and he offered to accompany her, but she shook her head. "This is something I need to do alone," she said, "but I would like you to wait for me." "Not at the cemetery, but at the church maybe." "Of course," Ryder agreed without hesitation. "Whatever you need." The cemetery sat on a small hill east of town, a collection of wooden crosses and occasional stone markers. Thomas's grave was under a cottonwood tree, the headstone she had scraped together money for reading simply. "Thomas Harper, beloved husband, 1853–1878. Lily stood there for a long time, her hand on the sun-warmed stone, letting herself feel everything she had suppressed for so long. "I am sorry I have not visited," she said finally, speaking aloud to the still air. "I could not bear it seeing you here, it made it too real." A breeze stirred the branches overhead, and Lily took it as permission to continue. "I met someone," she said. "His name is Ryder, and he is a good man." Different from you in some ways, but he has the same kind of steadiness that made me feel safe with you. I think you would have liked him." She paused, wiping away tears. "I need you to know that marrying him does not mean I am forgetting you. You will always be my first love, Thomas. You taught me what it meant to be loved well, and that is a gift I will carry forever. But I am also learning that the heart is bigger than I thought. There is room for honoring what we had and still building something new." She stood there until the sun began its descent toward the horizon, talking to Thomas about everything and nothing, until finally she felt a sense of peace settle over her. "Goodbye, my dear friend," she whispered, pressing her fingers to her lips and then to the stone. "Thank you for the time we had." When she walked into the church, Ryder was sitting in a pew near the front, his hat in his hands. He stood when he saw her, concern and love written plainly on his face. "Are you all right?" he asked. Lily went to him and wrapped her arms around his waist, holding tight. "Yes," she said, "I really am." March arrived with spectacular displays of wildflowers covering the desert in carpets of gold and purple and red. Lily and Ryder set their wedding date for the last Saturday of the month, and preparations consumed what little free time Lily had. She sewed herself a new dress, cream-colored with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs, simple but elegant. Ryder bought himself a new suit, black with a vest that he claimed made him feel like he was being strangled, but he wore it without complaint because Lily asked him to. The ceremony took place in the small church with Reverend Thompson officiating and about 30 people in attendance. Samuel Patterson stood as Ryder's witness, while Martha Green, who ran the boarding house in town and had become a good friend to Lily, stood as hers. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, and when Ryder slipped a matching gold band onto Lily's finger to sit beside the turquoise engagement ring, his hands were shaking slightly. "Do you, Lily Harper, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Lily looked into Ryder's dark eyes and said clearly, "I do." "And do you, Ryder Zimmerman, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do," Ryder said, his voice rough with emotion. "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Arizona, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Ryder, you may kiss your bride." Ryder cupped Lily's face in his hands and kissed her with such tenderness that several of the women in attendance could be heard sniffling. When they turned to face their guests as Mr. and Mrs. Zimmerman, Lily felt something she had not experienced in over 3 years: complete and utter happiness. The reception was held at Samuel Patterson's ranch, the same place where Lily had attended the Christmas party months earlier. There was food and music, and at one point Samuel pulled Ryder aside for what looked like a serious conversation. When they returned, both men were smiling. "Everything all right?" Lily asked Ryder when she could pull him away from well-wishers. "More than all right," Ryder said, unable to suppress his grin. "Samuel just told me he is willing to transfer ownership of the ranch to us next month instead of waiting until next year. His health has been declining faster than he let on, and he wants to move to California to be near his daughter while he still can. He is also reducing the purchase price significantly as a wedding present." Lily's eyes widened. "Next month? But that means—" "It means we start our life together as ranch owners instead of me being a hired hand," Ryder finished. "It means we can really build something, Lily, together." The enormity of it hit her all at once. In the space of a year, she had gone from a widow barely surviving to a married woman about to own a ranch. It should have been terrifying, but with Ryder's arm around her waist and his solid presence beside her, it felt like possibility instead of fear. That night, in the house that Samuel had built for himself 40 years ago and was now deeding to them, Lily and Ryder began their married life. The house was larger than Lily's small place behind the store, with 3 bedrooms and a spacious kitchen. It needed work, but Lily could see its potential, could imagine it filled with life and laughter. "What are you thinking?" Ryder asked, coming up behind her as she stood at the window looking out over the moonlit ranch. "That I am happy," Lily said simply, leaning back against him. "That I did not think I could feel this way again, but here I am." Ryder wrapped his arms around her, resting his chin on top of her head. "I am going to spend every day making sure you never regret taking a chance on me," he promised. Lily turned in his arms to face him. "I know," she said, and kissed him. The transition from store owner to ranch wife was not without its challenges. Lily had to learn an entirely new set of skills, from helping with the cattle to managing the ranch accounts, which were considerably more complex than the store's simple ledgers. But she threw herself into the work with the same determination that had kept her business running for 3 years, and Ryder was an endlessly patient teacher. She sold the general store to a young couple who had recently moved to Fort McDowell, using the money to buy breeding stock for the ranch. It felt strange at first, not having that daily routine, but she quickly discovered that ranch life offered its own rhythms and satisfactions. By June, they had hired 3 full-time hands to help with the work. Charlie, who had jumped at the chance to work for Ryder directly, an older man named Pete who had been working ranches for 40 years, and a young Mexican man named Diego whose skill with horses was almost supernatural. Together, they began the hard work of expanding the herd and improving the property. Lily found unexpected joy in the physicality of ranch work. She learned to rope and brand, to treat sick cattle, to ride fence lines checking for damage. Her hands, which had been soft from store work despite the calluses, became tough and capable. She wore split skirts that scandalized some of the town ladies and stopped caring what they thought. But what she loved most was the partnership she and Ryder had built. They made decisions together, each respecting the other's judgment. When they disagreed, which was not often, they talked it through until they found a solution that satisfied them both. It was a true marriage in every sense, and Lily marveled at how different it felt from her first marriage, which had been happy but more traditional in its divisions of labor and authority. One evening in late July, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Ryder said, "I have been thinking about something." "Dangerous," Lily teased, but she was curious. "You remember how you told me Thomas wanted 4 children?" Ryder's voice was careful, and Lily realized he was nervous about bringing up this subject. "I remember," she said softly. "I want children too," Ryder continued, "but only if you do. I know that being pregnant reminds women of what they are risking, bringing new life into a world that can be cruel. And after losing Thomas, I would understand if you did not want to take that chance." Lily was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to put her feelings into words. "I would be lying if I said I was not scared," she admitted. "But Ryder, you have taught me that fear is not a reason to stop living. Yes, something could happen to you or to me or to any children we might have. But think of all the love we would miss out on if we let that fear control us." She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "I want babies with you. I want to see what a child who has your eyes and my stubbornness looks like. I want to build a family and a legacy here on this ranch." Ryder's expression went soft with wonder. "Are you saying—" "Not yet," Lily clarified, "but I am saying I am ready to try when you are." Ryder pulled her into his lap, holding her close. I love you, Lily Zimmerman, more than I thought it was possible to love anyone." "I love you too," Lily replied, and the words, which had once seemed impossible to say to anyone besides Thomas, now flowed as naturally as breathing. The months that followed were some of the happiest of Lily's life. The ranch prospered under their joint management, with cattle prices high and their herd growing steadily. They paid off a significant portion of the debt to Samuel Patterson's estate, and even managed to save some money besides. In October, Lily realized her monthly courses had not arrived. She waited another week before telling Ryder, wanting to be sure, but when she finally shared the news over breakfast one morning, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He let out a whoop of joy that startled the chickens in the yard, swept her up in his arms despite her laughing protests, and spent the rest of the day looking at her with such wonder that she felt beautiful despite her old work dress and flour-dusted hands. "I am going to be a father," he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. "Not for several months yet," Lily reminded him, but she was smiling too. The pregnancy was not easy. Lily dealt with terrible morning sickness through the first 3 months, though it was not confined to mornings and hit at the most inconvenient times. Ryder was endlessly patient, holding her hair back when she was ill and making sure she ate even when the thought of food made her nauseous. By the time winter arrived, the sickness had passed, but Lily found herself exhausted all the time. She tried to keep up with her usual work, but Ryder and the ranch hands gently conspired to take over the more physically demanding tasks. Diego's wife, Maria, who had just had her 3rd child, came by regularly to check on Lily and offer advice that was actually helpful rather than the old wives' tales. Some of the town women kept pushing on her. "Your body is doing hard work growing that baby," Maria said firmly when Lily expressed frustration about her constant tiredness. "Rest is not laziness, it is necessary." As her belly grew, Lily found herself talking to the baby, telling it about the ranch and its father, and sometimes about Thomas too. She wanted her child to know that it came from love, that even though its mother had been afraid to open her heart again, she had found the courage, and this baby was the result. Ryder was devoted in a way that made Maria roll her eyes and declare all men should be so attentive. He read to Lily in the evenings, his hand on her stomach so he could feel the baby kick. He built a beautiful cradle from cottonwood, carving horses and cattle into the headboard. He painted the smallest bedroom in cheerful yellow and white, preparing a nursery with such care that Lily sometimes found tears streaming down her face at the sight of his broad back bent over his work. "I cannot seem to stop crying," she complained to him one evening in March of 1880. "Everything makes me emotional. You were hammering a nail yesterday and I started crying because you looked so handsome doing it." Ryder grinned. "I do look very handsome hammering nails," he agreed, and then laughed when she threw a pillow at him. But his expression grew serious as he pulled her close, carefully arranging her bulk against his side. "You are allowed to be emotional," he said. "You are growing our child. That is worthy of a few tears." "More than a few," Lily muttered, but she was smiling. Their daughter was born on a warm April evening with Maria serving as midwife and Ryder pacing holes in the floor of the living room. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Lily thought she might not survive it. But Maria was experienced and calm, talking her through each contraction, and finally, as the sun was setting, a baby's cry filled the house. "A girl," Maria announced, placing the squalling infant on Lily's chest. "A beautiful, healthy girl." Lily looked down at her daughter, at the dark hair plastered to her tiny head and the red, furious face, and felt a love so overwhelming it was almost painful. "Hello, little one," she whispered. We have been waiting for you." Ryder was allowed in moments later, and the expression on his face when he saw his wife and daughter together made Lily fall in love with him all over again. He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, touching the baby's tiny hand with one calloused finger, and when those miniature fingers wrapped around his, he looked at Lily with tears streaming down his face. "She is perfect," he said hoarsely. "You are both perfect." They named her Rose Harper Zimmerman, honoring both the love that had brought them together and the man whose death had nearly broken Lily. It felt right, this blending of past and present, this acknowledgement that both Thomas and Ryder had shaped who Lily was and who her daughter would become. The months after Rose's birth were exhausting but joyful. Lily discovered that, while she had worried about being a mother, the reality came more naturally than she had expected. She nursed Rose while keeping the ranch books balanced on her knee. She wore the baby in a sling while supervising the hands' work. She and Ryder took turns walking the floor when Rose was fussy at night, both of them bleary-eyed but happy. Charlie declared himself Rose's unofficial uncle and could often be found carving toys for her or making faces to elicit one of her gummy smiles. Pete, who claimed to be too old and set in his ways to care about babies, was caught more than once rocking Rose's cradle while humming old trail songs. Diego and Maria's children treated Rose like a beloved doll, and Maria became not just a friend but family. By Rose's first birthday in April of 1881, the ranch was firmly established as one of the most successful in the area. They had paid off the debt to Samuel Patterson's estate entirely, had expanded their herd significantly, and had even begun buying up adjacent parcels of land. More importantly, they had built a life full of love and laughter and purpose. At Rose's birthday party, which was attended by half the town despite Lily's intention to keep it small, Ryder pulled Lily aside for a quiet moment on the porch. "Happy?" he asked, though he must have been able to see the answer on her face. "Happier than I ever imagined being again," Lily confirmed. "You were right, you know. That day in my kitchen when you asked me to let you prove me wrong about never loving again, you were absolutely right." Ryder kissed her temple. "I had good motivation," he said. "The best, in fact." "I want more," Lily said suddenly. "More children, I mean. Rose should have siblings." "Are you sure?" Ryder asked, concern flickering across his face. "The birth was hard on you." "I am sure," Lily said firmly. "Besides, Maria says second births are usually easier." "If you are certain," Ryder said, and the hope in his voice made her smile. Their son was born in February of 1882, an easier birth than Rose's, though still exhausting. They named him Thomas Ryder Zimmerman, and when Lily held him for the first time, she felt a sense of completion, as if pieces that had been scattered for years had finally come back together. Rose, now nearly 2 years old, was fascinated by her baby brother and wanted to help with everything, though her help was more often hindrance. A daughter they named Grace followed in 1884, and then another son, Samuel, in 1886, named for the man who had given them their start. Each child was welcomed with joy, and their house rang with noise and chaos and love. By 1887, Lily was 30 years old, and their ranch had become one of the largest and most prosperous in Arizona territory. They employed a dozen hands, had built a new barn and expanded the house twice to accommodate their growing family. But more than the material success, it was the richness of their life together that made Lily grateful every single day. One evening in late spring, after the children were finally asleep, and she and Ryder were sitting on the porch they had expanded to wrap around the entire house, Lily said, "Do you remember that first day you came into the store?" "How could I forget?" Ryder replied. "You looked at me like I might rob the place," Lily laughed. I was suspicious of everyone back then, but you were so calm and steady even when I was prickly. Why did you keep coming back?" Ryder was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "I saw past the walls you had built. I saw the woman underneath who was scared and sad but also strong and capable and beautiful. And I thought, if I could just get her to trust me enough to let me in, we could build something amazing together." "We did," Lily said softly, looking out over their land where cattle grazed peacefully in the gathering dusk. "We really did." "No regrets?" Ryder asked, though there was no doubt in his voice, just a desire to hear her say it. "Not a single one," Lily confirmed. She turned to look at her husband, this quiet cowboy who had seen through her defenses to the heart underneath. "You gave me back my life, Ryder. You gave me love and family and a future I thought I had lost forever. How could I possibly regret that?" Ryder pulled her close, and they sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. From inside the house came the sound of one of the children crying out in their sleep, then settling again. In the barn, horses nickered softly. In the distance, a coyote called to its mate. This was home. This was family. This was the life that Lily had fought through grief and fear to claim, and it was more than she had ever dreamed possible. She had told Ryder she could never love again, and he had whispered, "Let me prove you wrong." And he had, every single day, with his steady presence and patient devotion and unwavering commitment to their partnership. As the years continued to pass, their children grew into individuals with their own personalities and dreams. Rose, now approaching her teenage years, showed an aptitude for business that reminded everyone of Lily in her store-keeping days. She kept meticulous records of the ranch's finances and had opinions about breeding stock that were surprisingly sophisticated for her age. Thomas, or Tommy as everyone called him, was quieter like his father, but with a mischievous streak that kept things interesting. He had a gift with horses that rivaled Diego's, and by the time he was 10, men were bringing their most difficult animals for him to gentle. Grace was the wild child, always covered in dirt and scratches, climbing trees and riding bareback across the range with complete disregard for what proper young ladies were supposed to do. Lily saw herself in Grace's independent spirit and refused to curtail it despite the occasional disapproving comment from town ladies. Samuel, the youngest, was only 4 but already showed signs of being a scholar. He preferred books to riding, and Ryder and Lily had to make a special trip to Tucson to buy him more advanced readers than Fort McDowell's small school could provide. In 1889, Samuel Patterson died peacefully in California at the age of 75. His daughter wrote to inform them, and included a note her father had written to be read after his death. In it, he expressed his pride in what Ryder and Lily had done with the ranch, and his gratitude for the kindness they had shown him in his final years in Arizona. He had left them a small sum of money with the instruction that it be used for something frivolous, something that brought joy. After much discussion, Lily and Ryder decided to use the money to take their entire family on a trip to San Francisco that summer. It was the first time the children had been beyond Arizona territory, and their excitement was infectious. They stayed in a real hotel, ate at fancy restaurants, saw the ocean for the first time, and rode the new cable cars. Rose and Grace insisted on visiting the shops. Tommy wanted to see the ships in the harbor, and Samuel was content to sit in the hotel reading about the city's history. On their last night in San Francisco, Lily and Ryder managed to steal away for an hour while Maria, who had come along as extra help with the children, watched the little ones. They walked along the waterfront as the sun set, and Lily was struck by how far they had come from that first meeting in her general store over a decade ago. "What are you thinking?" Ryder asked, reading her contemplative expression. "That life is strange and wonderful," Lily said. 10 years ago, I could not have imagined any of this. I was so sure my chance at happiness had died with Thomas, and now look at us. We have 4 beautiful children, a successful ranch, more blessings than I can count." "You still think about him?" Ryder asked. It was not a question born of jealousy, just genuine curiosity. They had long since reached the point where Thomas's memory could be acknowledged without pain. "Sometimes," Lily admitted, "but not with the same grief as before. Now when I think of Thomas, I remember the good times and feel grateful for what we had. And I think, somehow, that he would be happy for me, for us." "I like to think so too," Ryder said. He stopped walking and turned to face her, framing her face with his hands in the gesture that had become familiar over the years. "I love you, Lily Zimmerman. You took a broken heart and stitched it back together, and then you trusted me with it. That is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me." "I love you too," Lily replied, standing on her toes to kiss him. "Thank you for being patient. Thank you for proving me wrong." They returned to Arizona refreshed and closer than ever as a family. The ranch continued to prosper, and as the territory moved toward statehood, Ryder became involved in local politics, serving on the town council and helping to shape the future of Fort McDowell. Lily, meanwhile, never lost her business acumen. She invested their profits wisely, bought more land, and even helped several other ranchers negotiate better prices for their cattle. She became known as a woman you could trust to give honest advice and fair dealing, and her opinion was sought by men who would have dismissed her a decade earlier simply for being female. By 1892, Rose was 15 and had caught the eye of a young man named Daniel Worth, whose family owned the ranch adjacent to theirs. Lily watched the courtship with mixed feelings, remembering her own young love with Thomas, her later romance with Ryder. She wanted her daughter to know the joy of a good partnership, but she also wanted her to wait to be sure. "She is so young," Lily said to Ryder one night after Rose had returned from a chaperoned outing to a town dance. "So were you when you married Thomas?" Ryder pointed out gently. "That was different," Lily protested, though she knew it was not really. "She has a good head on her shoulders," Ryder said. "We raised her to be smart and careful. We have to trust that." He was right, of course. Rose was sensible and kind, and Daniel Worth seemed like a good young man from a decent family. When Daniel formally asked Ryder's permission to court Rose with marriage as the eventual goal, Ryder said yes, though Lily noticed his hands were shaking when he came back into the house. "My little girl," he said, looking stricken. Lily hugged him, hiding her own smile. "She will always be your little girl, even when she is a married woman with children of her own." "That is supposed to make me feel better," Ryder demanded, but he was smiling too. Rose and Daniel married in the spring of 1894, a beautiful ceremony that brought together both families. Watching her daughter pledge her life to the man she loved, Lily felt the sweet ache of time passing, of chapters ending and beginning. Rose moved to the Worth Ranch, though it was close enough that she visited frequently, and Lily adjusted to having one less person at her dinner table. But life had a way of filling empty spaces. In 1895, Lily was stunned to discover she was pregnant again at 38. The pregnancy was harder than her earlier ones, her body not as resilient as it had been in her 20s. But Ryder was even more attentive than before, and Maria was there every step of the way. And in March of 1896, Lily gave birth to twin boys they named James and Jack. 5 children, Ryder said wonderingly, looking at the 2 identical infants sleeping in a double cradle he had built. We have 5 children. Are you complaining? Lily asked tiredly. The twin birth had been exhausting, though both boys were healthy. Never, Ryder said fervently. I am just in awe of you, of us, of all we have built together. The twins brought new energy to the household. Tommy was 17 now and essentially running the day-to-day ranch operations under Ryder's supervision. Grace, at 12, helped Lily with the babies and showed a surprisingly gentle side that had been hidden under all her wild tomboy energy. Samuel, now 10, read to his baby brothers every evening, convinced that early exposure to literature would make them scholars like him. In 1897, Rose gave birth to Lily and Ryder's first grandchild, a boy named Matthew. Holding her grandson for the first time, Lily was overwhelmed by the continuity of it all, the way love expanded and multiplied across generations. She thought about her own parents, dead for so many years, and wished they could have known this family she had built. She thought about Thomas, who should have been here to see this too. But mostly she felt gratitude for Ryder, who had taken a broken widow and helped her become whole again. By the turn of the century in 1900, the Zimmerman Ranch was an institution in Arizona, now officially a state rather than a territory. Tommy had married a girl named Sarah Jenkins, and they lived in a house Ryder had helped them build on the eastern section of the ranch. Grace, at 16, was courting a young teacher from town who appreciated her intelligence and spirit. Samuel was talking about going to university, the first in their family to do so. The twins were 4 years old and thoroughly spoiled by everyone. Lily and Ryder, now in their 40s, had settled into a comfortable rhythm. The hard physical labor of the ranch was mostly handled by their sons and the hired hands, though both of them still stayed involved in the daily operations. They had learned to steal moments together, rides across the range just the two of them, quiet evenings on the porch after the children were in bed, Sunday afternoons reading together in their bedroom. One evening, as they celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary with a quiet dinner alone, Lily raised her glass of wine and said, "To the quiet cowboy who would not take no for an answer." Ryder smiled and clinked his glass against hers. "To the stubborn widow who made me work for every smile." "Did you ever imagine this?" Lily asked, gesturing around their home at the life they had built. "When you first asked me to let you prove me wrong, did you see all of this? Honestly, I just wanted you to see that loving again was possible," Ryder admitted. "Everything else, all of this, it exceeded my wildest dreams. 5 children, 2 grandchildren already with more probably coming, a ranch that will support our family for generations. But most of all, 20 years with you. 20 years of partnership and love and laughter. That is the real miracle, Lily." 20 years, Lily repeated softly. "It seems like both forever and no time at all." "I plan on at least 20 more," Ryder said firmly. "Maybe 40 if we are lucky." "That would make us very old," Lily pointed out. "And what is wrong with that?" Ryder countered. "Growing old with you sounds perfect." As they moved into the new century, their life continued to evolve. Grace married her teacher, a man named Peter Brooks, in 1902 and moved to Tucson, where he had taken a position at a larger school. She wrote weekly letters full of her new adventures in the city, and Lily was proud of her daughter's continued independence. Samuel did indeed go to university, studying law in California, and returned to Fort McDowell in 1906 to open a practice. He quickly became essential to the community, helping settle disputes and draft contracts, and he never forgot where he came from. Tommy and Sarah had 3 children by 1908, and Rose had 4 by then, and the ranch house was constantly full of grandchildren. Lily, now in her 50s, embraced her role as grandmother with the same fierce love she had brought to motherhood. She taught the girls to read and do sums, taught the boys to ride and rope, and told all of them stories about their family history. The twins, James and Jack, grew into capable young men who worked the ranch alongside Tommy. They were inseparable, finishing each other's sentences and seeming to communicate without words. In 1910, they announced their intention to start a horse breeding operation on the southern section of the ranch, focusing on quality rather than quantity. Ryder and Lily helped them get started, and within a few years, Zimmerman horses were sought after throughout Arizona. In 1912, Lily and Ryder celebrated their 33rd wedding anniversary. Lily was 55 now, her honey-colored hair liberally streaked with gray. Ryder was 59, with lines around his eyes and white at his temples, but to Lily he was as handsome as the day she had first really looked at him across the counter of her store. They were sitting on their porch one evening watching yet another sunset paint the sky when Lily said, "I think about that day sometimes, the day I told you I could never love again." "I remember," Ryder said. "You were so certain. So absolutely convinced that your heart was done with that kind of vulnerability." "I was wrong," Lily said simply. "You proved me wrong in every possible way, and I am so grateful that you were stubborn enough not to listen to me." "It was not stubbornness," Ryder corrected gently. "It was faith. Faith that what I saw in you was real, even if you could not see it in yourself yet. Faith that you had more love to give if you could just find the courage to try." "You gave me that courage," Lily said, reaching for his hand. Their fingers intertwined, weathered and marked by years of hard work, but still fitting together perfectly. "We gave it to each other," Ryder said. "That is what a real partnership is, Lily. Not one person saving the other, but two people making each other stronger." They sat in comfortable silence, a silence born of 3 decades together, of shared joys and sorrows, of children raised and grandchildren cherished, of a ranch built from nothing into something that would last. In 1915, the First World War was raging in Europe, though it seemed distant from their corner of Arizona. Samuel, now 33 and married with 2 children of his own, handled the legal matters for several families whose sons had gone to fight. Grace and Peter had moved back to Fort McDowell after Peter inherited his father's ranch, and Lily delighted in having her daughter close again. Rose's eldest son, Matthew, was 20 now and had started courting one of Tommy's daughters, which led to much family teasing about keeping everything in the family. The twins had both married, twin sisters no less, and their horse operation was thriving. By 1920, Lily and Ryder had 17 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren. The ranch was now essentially run by the younger generation, though both Lily and Ryder remained active advisors. They had earned the right to slow down, to spend their days doing what they pleased rather than what needed to be done. Ryder's health began to decline in 1922. It was nothing dramatic, just a gradual slowing down, more days when his joints ached, more nights when he was exhausted by dinner time. The doctor said it was just age catching up with him, that at 69 he had earned the right to take it easy. But Lily watched him carefully, remembering the vital, strong cowboy who had fixed her roof all those years ago, seeing how time had softened those hard edges. "I am not going anywhere yet," Ryder assured her when he caught her watching him with worried eyes. "I plan on keeping that promise of 40 years together. That does not expire until 1919. "It is 1922, Lily pointed out. "Then I am overachieving," Ryder said with the crooked smile that still made her heart skip. They celebrated their 45th wedding anniversary in March of 1924, surrounded by their massive family. The party was held at the ranch, with tables set up under the cottonwood trees and enough food to feed an army. There were 53 people present, all of them connected by blood or marriage to Lily and Ryder, all of them there to honor the love story that had started with a quiet cowboy and a grieving widow. Tommy gave a toast, his voice thick with emotion. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass, "who taught us that love is not just a feeling but a choice you make every day, who built not just a ranch but a legacy, who showed us that no matter what life takes from you, there is always the possibility of joy if you are brave enough to reach for it." Lily wiped tears from her eyes as everyone cheered and drank. She looked at Ryder beside her and saw that he was crying too, something he rarely did. "Happy?" she asked him, echoing the question he had asked her so many times over the years. "Happier than any man has a right to be," Ryder replied. "You gave me everything, Lily. Everything I never knew I wanted until I met you." "We gave each other everything," Lily corrected, using his own words from years before. "That is what real partnership is." As the party continued around them, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren running and laughing and living, Lily reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She thought about Thomas, her first love, whose death had nearly broken her. She thought about the young widow she had been, so certain that her heart was too damaged to ever be whole again. She thought about the quiet cowboy who had seen past her defenses and refused to accept her certainty that love was over for her. And she thought about the life they had built together. 5 children, countless grandchildren and great-grandchildren, a ranch that would support the family for generations to come. But more than the tangible achievements, she thought about the intangible ones. The thousands of mornings waking up beside Ryder, the laughter and tears and quiet moments of connection, the way they had become partners in the truest sense, each supporting and strengthening the other. In early 1925, Ryder had a stroke. It was mild, thank God, and he recovered much of his function with time and effort. But it was a reminder that their time was finite, that even the strongest love story eventually comes to an ending. "I am not ready," Lily told him one night as they lay in bed, her head on his chest listening to his steady heartbeat. She was 68 now, but in that moment she felt like the young woman who had been so terrified of losing someone she loved again. "Neither am I," Ryder admitted. "But Lily, we have had 46 years together. 46 years of love and life and family. That is more than most people get. If I die tomorrow, I die a happy man." "You are not dying tomorrow," Lily said fiercely. "You are going to live to be 100 and I am going to be right beside you." Ryder laughed softly, his hand stroking her gray hair. "Deal." He did not make it to 100, but he made it another 5 years, long enough to see their 50th wedding anniversary in 1929. The party that year was even larger than the one 5 years before, now including great-great-grandchildren. Ryder was frailer now, moving slowly with a cane, but his mind was sharp and his love for Lily as strong as ever. 50 years, he said wonderingly as they danced slowly to music played by one of their grandsons on a fiddle. That quiet cowboy and stubborn widow made it 50 years. "We did," Lily agreed, holding him close, trying to memorize this moment, this feeling of being in his arms. Ryder Zimmerman died peacefully in his sleep on a cool October night in 1930, just after his 77th birthday. He simply did not wake up, transitioning from sleep to death so gently that it took Lily several minutes to realize he was gone. The grief was profound, a tearing pain that reminded her of losing Thomas all those years ago. But it was different too, because this time she was not a young widow with no idea how to go on. This time she had 51 years of love and partnership to sustain her, 5 children who rallied around her, a family that Ryder had helped her build. At his funeral, Lily stood before the packed church and spoke about the man her husband had been. Ryder Zimmerman was a quiet man, she said, her voice steady despite her tears. He did not need many words because his actions spoke so clearly. He saw a broken widow who thought her life was over, and he had the patience and faith to prove her wrong. He gave me back my life, gave me a family and a future I thought I had lost forever. And he did it all with gentle kindness and unwavering devotion. I am grateful for every single day we had together, and I will carry his love with me for whatever time I have left. Lily lived another 15 years, dying peacefully at 88 in 1945. By then, the ranch had grown even larger, managed by her children and grandchildren. World War II had just ended, and several of her great-grandchildren had served, all of them coming home safely. She lived to see things she never could have imagined in her youth. Automobiles replacing horses, electricity powering their home, radios bringing news from around the world. But what she treasured most in those final years was the knowledge that she had lived fully, that she had been loved deeply and loved just as deeply in return. She thought often about the journey from that bitter young widow to the woman she had become, and she was grateful for every step, every struggle, every joy. On her final night, surrounded by her children, Lily closed her eyes and seemed to see Ryder standing in the doorway of their bedroom, young and strong like he had been when they first married, smiling at her with love and welcome. "Time to come home," he seemed to say, reaching out his hand. And Lily, who had been ready to die alone all those years ago, now died surrounded by love, knowing that whatever came next, she would face it hand in hand with the quiet cowboy who had proved her so wonderfully, completely wrong. The ranch continued for generations, eventually becoming a historical landmark in Arizona. The story of Lily and Ryder Zimmerman became a family legend, told and retold to each new generation. They spoke of the widow who thought her heart was too broken to love again, and the patient cowboy who whispered, "Let me prove you wrong," and then spent 51 years doing exactly that. It was a love story that defied tragedy, that showed how hope could grow in the most barren soil if tended with care. It was a testament to the power of patience, faith, and the willingness to be vulnerable even when everything in you wants to protect yourself from pain. It was, in short, the best kind of love story. One that was true, tested by time, and strong enough to create a legacy that would last forever. And somewhere in the golden light of the Arizona desert, perhaps two souls stood hand in hand, looking over the ranch they had built together, watching their descendants carry on the legacy of love they had started, and knowing that they had lived well, loved deeply, and left the world better than they found it. The end.